Oh, I've been so excited for this one. So a while back I made a video talking about Convergence, which is the worst DC event of all time. Convergence is unbearable. It doesn't know what it wants to be, it has no impact on the DC universe, and it has fucking Telos in it. It's horrible. I didn't understand how such an incredibly horrible comic could be published. Then Heroes in Crisis came out. Alright, I almost feel bad at this point. I feel like this entire channel has become a Tom King shit-talking channel. But I just can't wait to talk about this story. Heroes in Crisis is the worst DC event of all time. At least it would be if it were an event. By any reasonable definition of the word event, an event is a story that brings the universe together with lasting impact on the DC universe. And Heroes in Crisis has none of that. It borrows its Crisis name from the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is one of the greatest DC events of all time. But then again, so did Identity Crisis. If Convergence is bad in a Batman and Robin sort of way, Heroes in Crisis is bad in a Batman v Superman kind of way. This book takes itself more seriously than Dan DiDio takes killing Nightwing. This book was originally flaunted as a passion project that talked about Sanctuary, which was a place for superheroes to deal with mental illness. That is a genuinely interesting idea, and of course, that is not at all what Heroes in Crisis is about. Saying Heroes in Crisis is a story about Sanctuary is like saying Detective Pikachu is a movie about Pokemon. Sure, Detective Pikachu is set in the world of Pokemon, but it's set in the one city where Pokemon act differently. It's not about Pokemon battles, it's not about stopping Team Rocket or becoming the very best that no one ever was. It's a detective story that just so happens to take place in the world of Pokemon. Just as Heroes in Crisis is a half-assed murder mystery that's set in the world of Sanctuary. Only difference is Detective Pikachu is good. Heroes in Crisis is a mystery about a whole bunch of heroes that end up dead in the mental health institution of Sanctuary. Sanctuary is where heroes would go to treat their symptoms after living in the constant violence of superheroics. So the first question you're going to ask, who died? Well, probably Lagoon Boy, Commander Steel, Red Devil, Gunfire, Hotspot, Narc, Solstice, Nemesis, and Poison Ivy. And I say probably because the book never really tells you. There's never a scene in this whole book where any of the characters mourn any of the dead heroes. Hell, Poison Ivy isn't even shown dying in this book. The characters just casually mention she's dead in one of the later issues. This isn't fucking Polka Dot Man. Poison Ivy is a very important Batman villain, and she is killed off page. Now there are two more deaths that I didn't mention in that list, and that's because I don't even want to talk about it. The last two deaths are Roy Harper and Wally West. We'll get to this later. The story starts with our two main characters for the event, Harley Quinn and Booster Gold, or as much as main characters you can say there are in this story. Seriously, this book jumps between main characters more than Young Justice outsiders. As much as I hate the Earth 2 characters being the main heroes of Convergence, at least they stuck with them for the whole story. In Heroes in Crisis, we follow Harley and Booster, then we follow the Trinity, then we follow Batgirl, then we follow Wally, not to mention all of these pages dedicated to characters who just aren't in the story at all. There is seriously an entire issue dedicated to Narc. And I know what you're thinking. Who the hell is Narc? Great question. I wish I knew the answer. His issue is honestly the best in the whole story, but it would help if he was at all a character in the story. Instead, he was just killed to add to this mindless body count. Anyway, back to Harley and Booster chilling out in a diner. Each of these two are convinced that the other killed all these heroes in Sanctuary. So they immediately start fighting. Okay, and we need to take a second and talk about Harley Quinn in this story. Harley Quinn was originally created as a sidekick to the Joker in the animated series, but in future stories like Mad Love, we got to learn more about her character. We saw how she was in this abusive relationship with the Joker, and eventually she would try and run away from the Joker and all of his abuse. She was a realistic character with strong character development. Nowadays though, she is basically DC's version of Deadpool. She's so quirky and random, There is a literal comic where Harley Quinn becomes one of the female Furies. You know, the literal gods of infinite power. I cannot make this shit up. Now, I am not a fan of this version of Harley Quinn. I like the original animated series version. But if sales say anything, they show that a lot of people really do like this version of Harley Quinn. And that's fine, to each their own. These stories are really almost in a universe of themselves now. The stuff Harley is doing is so over the top that it feels almost out of continuity. But Heroes in Crisis takes this hilariously over-the-top Harley and throws her into a serious murder mystery story. It's ridiculous. Whenever Harley shows up in this story, she fucking sings. She makes these stupid nursery rhymes explaining what she is doing while she is doing it. But that's not as bad as later in the series when she doesn't understand the difference between killing and murder. Anyway, while Harley and Booster try to murder each other, the Trinity are scouting out the deaths over at Sanctuary. And Superman's reactions to these characters' deaths is absolutely hilarious. Alright, let's take Wally West for example. Wally West and Superman are friends. They have worked together and hung out for years. And when Superman sees Wally's dead body, his reaction is,
"Kill confirmed."
Like, it's this attempt to make the Trinity look serious and invested in the mission, but you're telling me the big blue Boy Scout wouldn't be sobbing over seeing his friend's dead body. But I guess the deaths in this story are more plot points than actual endings to character stories, so there really is no need for any of the characters to give meaningful reactions to them. So Harley runs off to the Penguin's Iceberg Lounge to hide from Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, but first off, we just need to take a second to appreciate Batman's dialogue here. This is the start of a scene, mind you. You know, I don't. Alright, Tom King's Batman is a fucking wall. He just says no to absolutely everything. Every comment you throw his way, he just immediately shuts down. Now there's plenty of ways to write Batman. Some go for that smooth-talking playboy Bruce Wayne. Scott Snyder usually likes more of a joking, quippy Batman in his Justice League. Frank Miller just turns him into a complete badass. But this version is easily the most hilarious. So the Trinity catch up to Harley Quinn, which leads to easily the dumbest scene in the whole series. Okay, I'm saying that now, but I'm sure I'm going to be saying that at least a dozen other times. So let's look at the teams here. On Team Trinity, we have Batman, a billionaire with unparalleled combat skills with a trick up his sleeve for every situation. A literal demigod who is indestructible, hyper strong, and was trained on an island of warriors. And most importantly, a fucking Kryptonian with laser beams, frost breath, super speed, and the ability to actually just nuke everything around him. On the other team, Harley Quinn. Just Harley Quinn. And guess who wins? Yeah, but the real salt in the wound is when Superman says to Batman, "She's good. As good as you." Time out. Bruce Wayne, the Batman, trained under the world's greatest ninjas and assassins to master his hand-to-hand combat. Defeated Bane, Deathstroke, Ra's al Ghul, Prometheus, and David Kane, some of the world's greatest fighters. Held his own in a fight against a speedster, created a fucking cloning machine, planted a backup memory in his own mind in case he were ever mentally compromised, single-handedly took down an invasion of white Martians who are just as strong as Superman, who, according to the guy who wrote this story, fought demons off in another dimension for 10 whole years, and dug himself out of his own fucking grave through sheer willpower. No, she is not as good as you. And Superman, why can't you just go after her? You have super speed. Hell, you don't even need super speed. She left 2 seconds ago. Batman, you have a bat plane, but you don't even need a bat plane. She left 2 seconds ago. Go follow her. So while the Trinity goes off and broods for a bit, Booster Gold runs into Barry Allen. So Booster tells Barry about this whole sanctuary business, and Barry runs away to confirm that Wally's dead.
Kill confirmed.
This means that none of the Justice League told Barry Allen that his best friend was dead. Wouldn't that be like the first thing you do? But I mean, if all their physical powers are nerfed for the story, might as well nerf their mental capacity too. Now skip over to the world's most weird and unnecessary side plot. Basically, the killer seems to have leaked the footage from the Sanctuary therapy sessions to the Daily Planet, and specifically to Lois Lane. And we are introduced to Lois in the story while she tries to figure out how to spell the word traitor. Seriously, Pulitzer Prize winning writer Lois Lane doesn't know how to spell traitor. So Lois releases these interviews to the public because she's a reporter. And the weird thing is the book makes this seem like a good thing. Seriously, if I were a superhero going to therapy, I would not want those tapes released to the public. Also, were all of them leaked? Because several heroes just say people's secret identities during the interviews. Hell, Batman is unmasked. So they can't have leaked them all, right? So what got leaked? I don't even know anymore. Meanwhile, Booster and Harley each find themselves a new teammate. Now who do you think would team up with Booster Gold? Luckily, it's Blue Beetle, which makes sense considering they're best friends and all. When Booster has a problem, of course he'd turn to Ted Kord. Now who do you think Harley would team up with? Well, Poison Ivy for one, but she was killed off page. How about Catwoman? I mean, they were both on the Gotham City Sirens together. Maybe Huntress, Power Girl, who she knows from her Deadpool Light series. Another Bat villain? No, she teams up with freaking Batgirl. Why? Because they're both girls or something. So while Superman spends a whole issue giving a speech to the public about Sanctuary, these two new duos get to work. Now mind you, in this murder mystery series, no one does any actual detective work. Booster, Beetle, Harley, and Batgirl essentially accomplish nothing throughout the whole series. At the end, they just kind of figure out who it is without doing any work. But all these guys just act so confusingly. Like, Harley's only desire right now is to kill Booster Gold, and Batgirl just couldn't care less. Like, she jokes about it with her, like, now Harley, don't you kill Booster Gold. And then Harley's just like, then I'll murder him. And this back and forth is basically half an issue. And when the two duos finally meet up and Harley actually starts killing him, Batgirl is just so nonchalant about it. She's like, he has a force field. And while Harley is literally fucking killing Booster Gold, Batgirl knocks Blue Beetle out for some reason. Batgirl, you need to be taking this way more seriously. And then we finally learn who the murderer is. Guys, this one hurts. The man who leaked the information on Sanctuary, fled the crime scene, and slaughtered all of those heroes was Wally West. Fuck that. Now, the reasoning behind this is interesting. It's not good, but it's interesting. Ever since Wally returned in DC Universe Rebirth #1, he's missed his family, and everyone expects him to be the symbol of hope, but he's lost the people he's cared about most. And this is what makes him go to Sanctuary. And this is a genuinely interesting story arc and a meaningful direction for the character. But this is not Wally West. Wally, more than any other hero in the DC universe, genuinely loves being a superhero. Being a hero is what gets him through his problems. Most superheroes just so happen to get their powers. It's a freak accident or they were born with them. But Wally grew up watching other heroes. He is a genuine fan of Superman and the Flash and the rest of the League. So when Wally was gifted superpowers, he couldn't be happier. His defining trait is optimism. And while you might argue that making him sad here in the story is why it's interesting, I just think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of Wally West as a character. Again, his scenes are well written. His interviews where he's trying to be optimistic despite repressing his feelings are heart-wrenching. But they prioritize the story over the character. Heroes in Crisis cares so little about what long-term effects this has on Wally's character. It only gives him this massive, character-altering change in service of the plot. It is the most shameless attempt to cram a character into something he's not. But for the sake of the story, let's go with it. So Wally freaks out because he thinks the entirety of Sanctuary was built to just help him, and no one else can understand what he is going through. So to call Sanctuary's bluff, he requests the computer show him all the videos of the other heroes' interviews. And the machine is obviously like, for confidential reasons, we can't do that. So Wally says bet and hacks into the video thing and has to watch everyone's trauma in what's basically instantaneous, even for a speedster. So Wally has a massive panic attack and runs outside, triggering an alarm. This leads to all the other heroes evacuating and going to comfort Wally. But here's the thing. As we all know, the Speed Force is unstable, so when all these heroes pressure him, he freaks out and the Speed Force unleashes on them, killing them all. You know, because speedsters constantly have to hold back the destructive power of the Speed Force. I'm lying, by the way. This was never a thing before, anywhere in the Flash universe. Never once has Barry, Wally, Jay, Max, Jesse, Wallace, or any of the other speedsters had to deal with this issue. In fact, let's look at this guy, Godspeed. I'm not using Professor Zoom because he's powered by the negative Speed Force, or Zoom because he's just temporally displaced, but Godspeed is a Flash villain that uses the Speed Force. Now, how fucking convenient would it be for Godspeed to just be able to uncontrollably nuke everything around him? That shit would be busted. But you know why he doesn't? Because that's not something speedsters can do. Again, this story doesn't care about characters or rules or continuity. If the story says the Speed Force needs to go crazy, it goes crazy. Now, everything that's happened up until this point is redeemable. Wally can get the help he needs to deal with his problems, and killing all those people was not his fault. He had absolutely no control over his actions. But here is where they cross the fucking line. Wally not only runs from the scene of the crime, no, that would make him only as bad as like Despero or Mongol, but Wally decides to stage the bodies to frame Booster and Harley and make each other think they did it. All while he goes back in time or some shit and makes a clone of himself so he can still make it look like his body was there. He kills a bunch of heroes, he defiles dead bodies, including his friend Roy, and he frames 2 innocent people for murder. That's some fucked up shit. I think it is now canon that Wally West killed more heroes in the DC universe than any villain, period. More than the Anti-Monitor, more than Darkseid, more than Superboy Prime. I'm pretty sure. Hell, the only thing that makes Heroes in Crisis resemble a crisis is the body count. So the world's most annoying detectives arrive at the scene of the crime, and after hearing Wally's story and understanding all the pain and the trauma he's went through, Harley knees him in the balls. What a perfect ending to this story. Now, some of it's good, a lot of it's not, but this book is easily the worst event of all time because it is the death of DC Rebirth. You see, there are plenty of books out there that don't treat DC characters with respect, and that's one of the big critiques of the New 52 reboot. You had entire histories of characters getting rewritten. Cyborg wasn't a member of the Teen Titans, the Justice Society didn't exist, Wally West was reduced to a racial stereotype, but I don't think any book epitomizes what was wrong with the New 52 like Teen Titans. This book was written by Scott Lobdell, and Lobdell is not a good writer. Every aspect of this book is actively making fun of Teen Titans fans. Let's take Bar Tor for example. So instead of bringing Bart Allen to the team, a classic Titans character, Lobdell decides to make a character who's basically the same, except worse in every aspect. Bar Tor's entire existence is just a reminder that we won't be getting Bart back anytime soon. Lobdell's Titans also retcons Tim Drake's past to where he was never Robin, he was always Red Robin. The book is horrible and showcases everything wrong with the New 52. Then Jeff Johns came along and decided to kickstart the DC Rebirth initiative, which brought the love and joy of these characters back into the DC universe, and notably brought back Wally West. Wally is the symbol of everything bright and optimistic about the DC universe, and Johns brought him back front and center. We saw hugely creative titles and ideas. Let's take Peter J. Tomasi's Superman for example. This book follows Superman and his wife Lois as they raise their super son John. It's a heartwarming father and son book, and Tomasi just understands what makes Superman Superman. His passion for the character shows, as did other writers and books throughout the line. Greg Rucka, after a long time in DC exile, returned to tackle Wonder Woman. Robert Venditti finally decided to kick his Green Lantern run into gear with this beautiful team-up between the Green and Yellow Lanterns. Christopher Priest delivers one of the most faithful and ambitious Deathstroke books of all time. Ben Percy brought Black Canary back into the life of Green Arrow. Nightwing was back in blue. Aquaman proposed to Mera. The Titans were back together. This was truly a renaissance for DC. But over time, Johns became busy with other projects, and DC removed the Rebirth title from their books altogether. And Heroes in Crisis was the final nail in the coffin to prove that DC Rebirth was dead. Turning Wally into a mass murderer is the greatest metaphor I can think of for this post-Rebirth era. It's not about honoring the characters, it's about grimdark stories that kill off characters for shock value. The prodigal son returned in Rebirth to save the DC universe, but Heroes in Crisis turned that hope into something messed up. Let's look at the rest of the line around this time. Nightwing got amnesia and became Rick Grayson. Brian Michael Bendis took over Superman and aged up John. Wonder Woman bounced from filler arc to filler arc with no direction. Red Hood went back to the dark side and ran away from Gotham. The Titans book was canceled. All the hard work set up in DC Rebirth was killed thanks to these grimdark stories. But Wally isn't the only character in Heroes in Crisis who's massively out of character. Every character in the story is boiled down to the worst trait of themselves. Batman is over-controlling, Booster and Beetle are only friends because they put up with each other's problems, Lois Lane is shrewd, Superman can't be perfect. These aren't characters with flaws, these are walking flaws that ignore the entirety of these characters' backstories and pasts. King strawmans every character to fit the narrative. And nothing shows this more than those confessional scenes. Some are alright, most aren't. You ever see that old movie? The one where the guy has to do the thing? I think that's me. I'm the guy who has to do the thing. This is the worst Blue Beetle quote of all time. People do not talk like this. Hal mentions he doesn't even know what willpower is. Seriously? That's the thing you know most about. You are the strongest willed person in the universe. You forged your own ring based on sheer willpower. Let's look at Catwoman. Please tell me she doesn't just fucking say meow. God damn it! Jim Corrigan is saying some I'm 14 and this is deep stuff. And worst is Superman's interview. Superman mentions that he has to be perfect. Alright, this is so contradictory to his character that it is impressive. The whole point of Superman's beliefs is that heroes don't have to be perfect. It's the fact that they're trying that's important. This whole event is incredibly disrespectful to the DC universe and its characters. There are moments of good story in here, and some themes that are very worth exploring in comics. But on top of whatever goodwill the story has, is Wally standing over the pile of dead bodies of people he's killed. Heroes in Crisis is everything that DC Rebirth fought against. I give Heroes in Crisis 4 dead Titans out of 10. But hey, maybe there's hope. DC announced a new book starring Wally, something I've been asking for since my Why Wally Matters video. I mean, he was a big part of this story. Maybe they can just retcon this whole thing and get back to telling good Wally West stories. Maybe DC is finally starting to care about Wally West. Okay, now let's see who's writing this thing. Hey guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at InfinityInkCom1, and don't forget to stay tuned for more videos. If you want to throw in your 2 cents, leave a comment down below. See you guys next time.